Now, we talked about this mine shutdown that we did. We talked about this cloquet shutdown that involved a lot of breaker maintenance and some transformer testing and the like, both very highly specialized things. And then we think going forward about the specialized world, the I&E world, that continues to just fascinate me because I don't see this slowing down at all. What are some of the key attributes of people that win in this environment? Because the same people that were doing the transformer testing and doing the breaker maintenance work were the ones who were also possibly doing the programming and the commissioning of the mine shutdown. And there's some pretty common threads into what makes an I&E tech. In your mind, what are some of those commonalities that your team has that make them successful doing this work?
Most successful part of our team is the flexibility in everyone. They're very flexible, and every day, honestly, we're working on something different. You may get on a big project and work on it for a while, but then the next day you're going to be off saving a trouble call at a facility to keep them guys up and running. If you're flexible, that's a huge thing. The next thing is you got to be hate to use the word, but you got to be a little bit of a nerd. You got to look into things. You got to be able to really dig in, because even though we have a very good team and we have a lot of resources to bounce things off of, a lot of times there's going to be stuff none of us know. So you got to just dig in and figure it out and be willing to put in that research and figure it out, put in the long hours and the hard work to be able to do it.
So what are some of the things that the team uses when they're, because this is what's so fascinating about it is there's commonalities in automation and I&E work and electrical work, but then every single facility has their own unique thing cooking. You might get a call from a dock down in the port. They're trying to get a ship VFD to work properly so they can get a ship loaded, and they're stuck. And there we are, and it's a totally different one than you might have worked at over in Cloquet or up at the mine. What are some of the resources that you guys are using to help you troubleshoot a call?
It depends upon the manufacturer. A lot of times the manufacturer's websites have a lot of information. Some places we actually have contracts that we're allowed to be able to call tech support as well. A lot of what we do is all of this equipment is used somewhere, and someone's ran into the same issue guaranteed. So a lot of the stuff we're able to find on the internet. We do use AI some. I think it's going to get better. Currently, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. And you have to be careful with it because it might give you the wrong recommendation. Just sit down there, you just fried something.
Yeah, you better make sure that you think it through before you try that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's just research. Luckily, say in a drives case, something like that, there's always going to be a manual somewhere. Even if you can't find it on the company, they made a manual when thing first got put out, and somebody has that published somewhere for you. The manuals usually will get you through the vast majority of the troubleshooting. The other things that you have to think about, though, is it's a system. It's not possibly the drive. So we're just using that as an example. Say you have a drive hooked up to a conveyor, and that conveyor has a whole bunch of interlocks on that conveyor as well. Them interlocks could be in logic, which would be in your PLC or DCF system, or they could be physical, or they could be both. In the case that we had recently in port, there was both. So and the faults that we're getting on the drive were telling us that it wasn't the drive's problem. So we had to go through all the interlocks one by one. First started with the PLCs, with easy response check. So we did them first. Then we had to go through and do every mechanical interlock in there as well. Once we exhausted all of them, that's when we were able to get into the drive farther and actually found components that were bad inside of it, even though the drive said it was perfectly right.
Maybe so that the drive had components that had failed, but it was spitting out error codes that indicated it was elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, at least that's what I think makes, you use the word nerd, and it, I suppose, I don't even know what the definition of that is necessarily, but I think what I'm hearing is you've got to be willing to dig in and actually spend the time like literally reading through a manual, like taking a few minutes and going through page 18 and 24 and bouncing around and, okay, well, this is what it's supposed to be. Go to the drive, make sure that's what it is. And you just keep narrowing down absolutely what it, well, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. You just keep narrowing it down until I was in, well, it's got to be this specific component. Well, how would those techs stay up on the knowledge? Is it that they're actually getting this knowledge by getting all the calls? I would imagine that's it.
Yes. Yep. So troubleshooting is very similar on most calls. You, at least this is what I do. Well, first thing I'm going to do when I get there is assess the situation, see what's wrong. Same thing as you would do if you're doing a JSA for safety. You want to look at all your surroundings and see what's there, because there might be something very obvious. A lot of times we'll get out on a trouble call and, yeah, the drive ain't working. Well, I want to see the motor, rock over the motor's right. There's your troubleshooting, replace the motor, you get it full. A lot of times, however, you need to assess, all right, what's the most likely that's taking this out? And you start there and you start working down your list. Sometimes it's all on the list. Other times there's 2 or 3 things and it doesn't.
But I think Andrew, you said something that's really critical, but you got to think about it as the system, right? And it's like anything that you're troubleshooting in life, if you're trying to just identify a problem and you spend your whole time looking for a problem, forgetting about the why, and which is even when we talked about the mine shutdown or the cloquet shutdown, I was curious about the why behind it, because if you don't know the why, you can't help develop the system and you don't know how to find the solution. So in this situation, you show up at the port and there's an issue going on. If you don't realize that, well, this drive is actually literally driving something, a belt somewhere, and it could be that the belt actually has an issue that's causing the drive. The drive is functioning fine. It's just downstream, something isn't happening. Or in this case, not in this case, but in another case, it could be that something upstream is not allowing the drive to get what it needs to give the output. And sadly, / reality is the systems don't all get manufactured by the same person. They don't still get installed by the same person. You think about how many times when we've been on a new facility and you're constructing it, how many different hands are touching everything in that facility. And so now after it's been operating for a while, now you're trying to troubleshoot. That's quite a deal.
And not only that, but you have all the different manufacturers of the parts involved as well.
Right.
So you may have a Scout drive hooked up to an Allen Bradley controller that's using Schneider starters in the same system. Want to talk to each other, so you got to be able to figure out how to make that happen as well.
They all have their own proprietary reasons for keeping their information locked down. And so when you're talking about I&E techs that are successful, they're you had used that they're willing to like get in and figure it out and use this nerdy type go research and so on. Is that a good career path for somebody? Like, is it better than being an electrician? Is it the same? Is it whatever? What's your thoughts on I&E techs?
Yeah, electrician is a very good route to go. I'll never say anything bad about that. That actually was my second choice. The thing about being an automation tech is you're going to be bored. You're always going to have something to keep your mind going. So if you're the kind of person that wants that and also is able to work under pressure, because especially on when something's broke, almost guarantee the boss of the facility is going to be standing behind you while you're troubleshooting. If you can handle that and you enjoy that and it works for you, oh yeah, automation is very rewarding once you get it. To me, the main difference, say, between being a mechanic or an electrician or any of those routes to automation is automation is a very thought through process and much less physical work. There's plenty of physical work in it, yeah.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, when an electrician gets done running his conduit, yeah, look at how nice that looks. Where when an automation tech gets done making a system work, hey, look at I'm making product over there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the difference that I see.
And I think they both have such unique skill sets and they have a lot of similarities, right? You can be an electrician and be super critical in helping get a systems change out completed from uh, a Honeywell system over to a Rockwell system.
Absolutely.
Can be
Couldn't do it with all.
right. And same thing for an automation tech, can be really, really good at writing a program, but they can show up and really help during a facility shutdown to make sure that the electrical work gets done in a way that facility gets back up and running easily. We were doing some fire detection systems up at the mine recently, and I just seen that one of the folks who's been working on the I&E side a little bit more was involved in that project over in the palletizer.
Mhm.
And he was definitely bossing that portion of the project because he was just more familiar with how all the buttons are working together and how the cameras work. And he just was more knowledgeable about it. And so I think it really is successful when you can have a skill set that does both. But naturally, in this world, as we go forward, you're going to tend to fall into one more than the other.
Yes, and it's very nice to have the flexibility of doing both, especially in times when you don't have as much work going on. As long as it's going to be busy.
And we've seen this time and time again, haven't we? That where all of a sudden your team on the Monday morning, you're during our Monday kickoff, and you're on, oh boy, she's a smoking weed.
Mhm.
And then the next week it's like, man, I don't know if we have anything going on really this week. Of course, one trouble call and things get cheap rapidly for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think as we go forward for folks to think about that, um, all of these AI data centers and the like that are getting built, but more broadly, just as the world becomes more and more efficient, it's using more and more electricity, it's using more and more automated systems. There's a solid career path for folks to consider in this highly technical field of I need technical work, and this is another thing too. We'll eventually get the titles right. I move around from automation tests to I need text because it's such a broad
It is.
a requirement. Some facilities have, well, I have a programmer, I have an automation tech, I have an I&E tech, and I have an electrician. Well, yeah, sounds cute, right? But when you're a contractor and you're trying to take care of multiple facilities with, frankly, people who have embedded folks already, but they just need the extra push from time to time. How do you get all these positions perfect, right?
And that's the hard part. You got to be able to do all of them.
Yeah.
And every person's going to be different. Every person's going to have a higher task. There's some guys are going to be way better at programming, but as long as they can get by out in the field doing that side of it too, you'll be a fine fit. If you're going to be only programming, you should probably go to engineering school and work for an engineer.
Exactly. Yes. And we got to be very clear about that when we're out looking for people or hiring people. Like here on the contract side of it, there's this challenge of you have to know all of these different parts and be flexible to work in all of them. But there's also this super rewarding piece. Like, how cool is that while you've been at Westcom, you've been part of a home mine controls upgrade system, and that wasn't the only one you've done for that mine. You've installed new ship loading equipment down at the cement facility. We've been over at the coal docks doing things. We've been over at the ceiling tile manufacturer. We've been on pipelines. We've done breaker maintenance. We've done transformer maintenance. We're doing all kinds of panel builds and programmings, and where else. Like, how rewarding to think that you can actually go into any one of these facilities and be a valuable asset. Like, to me, as you go forward or as you're out working, of course the paycheck is nice, of course the benefits are helpful and the like, but life is a little deeper than that. And there's something pretty neat about just having a hand in getting the facility back up and running.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's the rewarding part of doing something with Westham is you get to be in all these different places. If you work at a facility, because I did that for many years, you have your one area, you have your one scope, and say transformer maintenance, breaker maintenance, that's contracted out to somebody like us. So your scope is just to keep the place running, basically. You're replacing parts and troubleshooting, which is very fun. But when you can get your hands into all of it, some of it you're not going to like. There's certain things you're probably not going to like, but the mass majority of it's going to be very rewarding once it's working at the end of the day.
That's awesome. So you're still happy doing what you're doing?
No,
Honestly, that's a side benefit of doing a podcast, is I get to find out what
Yeah.
you're doing. Look, you can look.
no, I'm definitely happy. I'm very happy in the role I'm in now. It's
Cool.
been a challenge.
Yeah, well, also good to catch up on the mine project and the Cloquet project, and just NFPA 70B and where I need techs are going. So appreciate your time, Andrew.
Absolutely.